Good evening. Tonight, Firing Line has an extraordinary guest, Loida Nicolas-Lewis. She is extraordinary in almost every sense of the word. Miss Lewis is the top and wealthiest businesswoman in America. She is chairman and chief executive officer of TLC Beatrice, a food chain ranked as the top African-American business firm in the United States. For us Filipinos, Miss Lewis is even more extraordinary because she is a Filipino-American. Her 24-year-old marriage to the late Reginald Lewis was in itself a love story of unusual proportions. We do intend to bring in this Fireline interview with Miss Lewis not just the business dimension of that marriage, but its human drama. As far as we know, this is the first romance of its kind. It involved a handsome, hugely successful African-American from Baltimore wooing and winning a lovely and talented Filipina from Sorsogon who brought the best of Filipino culture to that marriage. Yes, Winnie, in effect, this is a Christmas story, a story of love, a story of devotion, and an undying belief that the good Lord up there decides our destiny.
Alam mo, Teddy, it sounds like you found religion very recently.
That's what Tori was telling me in Cardinal Sin, as a matter of fact.
It must be good for you to come back to Firing Line after that tremendous...
Oh, yes.
You were talking about human drama.
Yeah.
Yours was a human drama of epic proportions. Yeah, and I also noticed that in the introduction to Loida Nicolas-Lewis, you failed to mention a very important thing. I know it's a sexist remark.
We can mention it later on.
No, you must mention right now to sort of titillate the viewers.
Yeah.
She's a very pretty lady. Ikaw naman wala kang kagalaan.
I think that all they have to say,
you have no
all
sense.
They have to do is to watch her on TV and draw their own conclusions. No?
Okay. Okay.
Draw their own conclusion. But whatever it is, may I take the opportunity of what we have left in this intro portion of Firing Line to thank you, Winnie, for having held the fort in the last program of Firing Line.
Teddy, I'm sorry that I wasn't here 2 Mondays ago when when this thing happened. When I came home from the States and I found out, sabi ko, my golly, siguro if I did not go, hindi mangyayari to kay Teddy. You see, that's what happens. I just leave for a little while and your life falls apart.
Well, our life becomes much more exciting, Winnie. I think what the anthropologist said, as you get older, you become more interesting.
Prettier will do. Prettier.
Okay.
Well,
on that note, we will pause for a brief break as we have the honor to welcome our guest for Firing Line tonight, Miss Loida Nicolas-Lewis. Welcome to Firing Line, Ms. Loida Nicolas-Lewis. It's our honor and our pleasure to have you aboard Firing Line.
Yeah, we've been trying to get you for I don't know how long, Teddy.
But about a month ago,
This lady disappears and appears and, real mysterious sort of thing. What is it, security?
Well, she's whirling like a top in the business community.
Because this was reset and reset. Ano nangyari?
Well, first thing, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. And there was some question of security, especially having read and heard about your own terrible experience. But in effect, you were out, you were set free.
Yes.
And so I have faith in the Filipino. They won't hurt me.
Well, that's good. That's good. Now,
nice. That's a pretty.
Let me have the advantage of asking you the first question, Miss Lewis. Before we go to the human drama of this interview, how does it feel to be up there, a celebrity, being played up by all the business publications and other top publications like the New York Times? How do you manage to handle success? What do you tell yourself at the end of the day?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I don't really pay it much mind. My husband has always said, It's performance, not publicity.
I see.
Of course, I am very grateful that the press has been very kind to me, but I don't run the business or even live my life for the sake of the front headlines that's coming on. It's best to just, I really have not been any different. I am what I have always been.
It doesn't turn your head. It doesn't bring you to cloud nine. It doesn't make you feel you're on top of the world. You see that very few people get up to.
Well, it was very good that before I started to become chair on February 1, 1994, I went on a retreat with the Jesuits in Mount Manresa in New York. And one of the passages that was given to me for reflection was St. Paul's letter, second letter to the Corinthians. And it says something like, "We are but earthenware jars that contain this treasure."
I see.
To make it clear that this overwhelming power, and for me, this TLC Beatrice, comes from God and not from us.
I see.
So it puts me in perspective, don't have your head too high up in the clouds, Loida, okay? Get the real facts.
That brings you into territory with here.
Yeah.
Well, before your husband died, he had left, according to this absolutely fascinating book, Loida. Before your husband died, he had sort of appointed his half brother Jean Fuget to take his place. What made you decide to take over after a year? Because I don't think Reg, is his name? I don't think Reg had you in mind. So I'd like to see how that transition took place.
Yes. The book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun, was half done when he died. And so I saw to it that it be printed and published. So it's just been published by Bookmark here in Manila. I was very much aware that my husband made Jean Fugit, his brother, vice chairman, so that when he died as chairman, he came in automatically. That's why it was very difficult for me to make a decision that after a year, I should take over. The reason why I did that is that my husband's life was the business. And he had worked very hard. You don't know what it is to be a black man in America. The racism, nobody can imagine. Nobody, unless you are black, can know the pain and the despair that you are constantly subject to being told you are inferior, you're no good, you will amount to nothing. To live up under those circumstances in the American society, and at the same time aspire, as my husband has aspired, to go to the very top of corporate America.
But why did you decide to take over from Jean?
Well,
he wasn't doing as good as you thought?
Let's put it this way. During that year, the recession in Europe was at its fiercest. The dollar, the franc and the Spanish peso devalued. And half of our business is ice cream, and it rained in Spain and all over Europe. So our earnings were down. Our expenses was up. Okay? And rather than be constantly telling him, this is what you should do, this is what you should do, I said, I'll take responsibility for myself and my family. I will pay my way.
And did you part company in good terms, or was there some kind of, because this is what, one of the 1,000 things that fascinated me.
Yes, no. Jean and I remains very good friends because he is my brother, and I saw to it that he had a good termination pay, and that I am just in our living, and he knows the Lewis family has 51%. So if I say this is the way it should be, then he says yes.
Loida, Miss Lewis, TLC Beatrice pulled in an income of 1.82 billion in 1994 after you took over following your husband's death. There were a lot of doubting Thomases who did not think you could ever make it, and because you were also a Filipina with no business experience, with no MBA, so they figured to see that you would fall flat on your face. How did you manage?
Well, when I decided I'm ready to take over, failure was never an option.
I see.
I know that I will succeed.
I see.
And all you have to do is really just take things one step at a time, and surround yourself with people whose judgment you trust, who has wisdom, and who are capable. So You know, I'm not doing it
In
alone.
other words, you chose the right people to advise you.
Absolutely. I think it's crucial to any leadership. I'm sure President Ramos is finding out that now. You know, you need good people around you.
You had a talk with the president. I'm sure that he must have asked you some questions about your business acumen.
No. I must say that President Ramos is very well regarded internationally. The economic program that he has given to us in Europe and then in New York is very sound.
I see.
You know, and I think when Senator Drilon said, and other clear-sighted members of Congress recently said that the entire Congress should resign so that President Ramos will have a free hand, I think it will help him tremendously.
You mean the cabinet?
No,
the entire cabinet should resign.
Which is exactly what she did with Beatrice. She made it lean.
Lean and mean.
Lean and mean. On that note, we'll pause for the next segment of Firing Line. Please stay with us.
Thank you.
Loida, the years ahead, how do they shape up for the Beatrice company? You know, in France you have about 600 outlets, probably the most outlets that you have. And Europe's economy has not been very healthy, but it seems that it might turn the tide in the near future. How do you expect to take advantage of this tide?
Yes, the TLC Beatrice has just recently completed a 175 million bond offering, and with a very permanent capital structure, debt structure for 10 years, we're now able to grow internally. Although I do recognize that Europe is still in a recession. The companies that we have, as you have mentioned, the supermarket, discount supermarket I have in France is growing quite good.
I see.
There is also the Spanish ice cream in our company La Manarquina. It's also growing well together with the Spanish economy.
Pero merong Beatrice company sa United States. That's not yours?
No.
Yours is Beatrice International.
Yes.
Yeah,
and since 2 years ago, the Beatrice USA has disappeared. It has been bought by Conagra.
I see. So no longer. So the Beatrice company is strictly you already at
In
this
Europe,
point in time.
there is also a Beatrice Canada. And
Which is
sometimes
not yours.
it is not ours. My husband used to own 20%, but when the company was sold, he sold also his 20%.
Tell me, in all his business decisions, were you privy to the processes, or were you, until he died, very much, the quiet woman at home and taking care of the children, that sort of stuff?
Anybody who knows me will not characterize me as quiet. Yes. No, I'm very much there. Okay, I have always said to people, I am an active listener. I'm not opinionated in the sense that every time he speaks, I have an opinion. But every time when I think he is listening and I can make a contribution, I tell him my own common sense.
Yeah, well, because I was particularly fascinated by the perseverance of this man. Defeat never fazed him. I think very few people, or at least until you read the book, you don't realize that the success was after a long period of drought, no? And 9 years he was trying to get his first company and he couldn't. How did you, what kind of support were you giving him in that period?
Well, that's why I wanted this book out, because I think it is a book of hope. My husband was not successful immediately.
Talaga?
He tried several times to buy a company. The first time was
Park Sausages.
Park Sausages in Baltimore itself. Okay, he had the check. But they went with somebody else, so that was a disappointment. But he didn't,
And he refused to believe that it was racist in character, no?
No, he never allowed racism to stop him. Okay, or let anybody else tell him, no, you cannot do that. No, you can only do this. And the second time was radio broadcasting. Not yet. That's the third. Okay, and the third was Almet, where he worked worked for 18 months.
I see.
Okay, wooing the owner and getting him to sign the contract and getting all the money together, around $8 million. And on the day of closing, the deal broke. And
Can
he
you
would
imagine
say,
that?
he wrote in this book that he felt almost the wall closing in on him.
I see.
Okay, but that again did not stop him.
I see.
He retreated and said, he didn't say, oh, because the lawyers were wrong and my investment banker,
Or my
no,
color is against me.
or
never.
my color, and he said, what did I do wrong?
I see.
And he started to look within himself and find out, self-examination.
Yeah, that's what's so-
Which brings me, Miss Lewis, to an interview that the Atlanta Tribune had with you, and it quoted you as saying, see, that there were always wolves waiting at the door, waiting to take over Beatrice. And how confident are you that you can stop these wolves and frustrate their designs?
Well,
Di ba closed
even with
company kayo?
Yes, it is a private company. We have 51%. And that's why when my husband died, some of them tried to take it, cheaply. So I knew that I'm not going to allow my husband's
They were
work
exploiting.
to just go, cheap, because they thought nobody could take over it. And that's part of my desire to make it succeed. I want his work to succeed.
Loida, is being a woman an advantage or a disadvantage in handling such a giant as TLC Beatrice? You once said that women have the capacity to juggle so many balls in the air.
It's part and parcel of our innate superiority, Teddy.
What is the meaning of that?
No. Men and women are different.
I see.
I don't want to say, as a woman, I am better. No, it's that I use...
You're different,
I
anyway.
am different.
Yeah.
And I think, it is true as a mother, as a wife, as a worker, as a friend. I mean, women wear so many different hats.
see.
So for me, when I became chairman, it's really sort of the same thing that I have been doing when I was wife to Mr. Lewis, mother to 2 daughters. I had my own career as a lawyer at INS. And also I was helping the Filipino community then.
Yeah.
So
Tell us about your expertise in immigration.
Does your
Please, tatlong libro yung
does your Filipino upbringing and culture, as a matter of fact, help you a lot in coping with all these things?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
The Filipino spirituality.
I see.
The Filipino sense of patience.
I see.
Sense of industry, hardworking. And all of that are good qualities of the Filipino, and I keep it with me.
And the Filipina sense of knowing how to work in the shadows without necessarily being very effective in front, but being able to control.
Only because they are always put aside. Pwede ba? That's part and parcel of working under obstruction.
But really, I wanted to find out your immigration expertise. I mean, in your desire to just keep on pushing Reg Lewis forward, his image and his persona, you've been very, very quiet about your own personal accomplishments aside from Beatrice. Because people said, it's easy because she took over.
Yeah.
Ginawa na ni Mr. Lewis yan eh. She just took over.
I want you to be able to tell us about your own expertise before you decided to take on this other job in immigration.
My husband and I always believe that we should have our own separate area in professional life.
Kita mo na yan. Kita mo na yan.
So although it
Hindi
was
chauvinistic yung asawa niya. Sige,
not at all, because
You're talking about Christian.
No, I think between man and woman, you should understand what are your gifts and your capabilities and divide the work between the two of you. So I know and he knows that he's better at earning a living. Okay, in my part, I was a lawyer. I trained as a lawyer at UP, and I'd like to use it. So I didn't want just to stay home. By then, we had 1 daughter. So I took the bar. I was after the Supreme Court in the United States allowed non-Americans to take the bar, I passed. And my first instinct was to join immigration. When they didn't take me, I sued them for discrimination.
And you won.
And won. I won 3 years back pay.
I see, yeah.
And for the past 10 years, before we moved to Paris, I've been working as a general attorney at the Immigration and Naturalization
During
Service.
which time, didn't you write a book or a couple of books?
Actually, I wrote it after I left.
When you were in Paris.
When we decided that we were moving to Paris, of course, I was a corporate wife. There were 2 girls who were in school, but then I still have time on my hands, and you can only shop so many times.
When you married Reg, he was just an up-and-coming lawyer, and you were a young girl. Na I noticed, I read in the book, it was very interesting, na second date pa lang he was already making his move. Really? Di ba? Is that right, Loida?
Yes.
Yeah, second date, he made his move. Ikaw naman sumama ka sa apartment niya. Will you please?
He was making his moves.
Hindi.
When she refused, as a matter of fact, you see, to be carried to somewhere.
No, that's second date. That's a second date. First date, and sino ba nagsha-chaperone na ikaw you were chaperoning Melly, ganun ba?
No.
Or what?
Melly, I was picking up Melly so that we can go to Europe with my mother
No,
on the around the world trip.
But that blind date
The first
between you.
date was a blind date.
Oo.
My
Sino ang chaperone?
It's not so much a chaperone, okay?
Yun,
It was a foursome.
Oo nga, pero
Yes.
di ba yun? O sige.
My sister Imelda was dating somebody who was my future husband's classmate at Harvard Law School.
I thought he was your boss.
He was also my
Oh,
boss.
kita mo.
Yes.
Okay.
He was my boss, and so when they were going out on a date, he said, "How about my secretary?" So he called my husband and said, "We're going out on a date. Would you like to date, my administrative assistant?" He said, "No, I'm too busy now." He was working then at a big law firm. "Oh, that's too bad. She's from the Philippines." I said, "Oh, wait a minute. I've never dated anybody from Asia before. Okay, I'm coming."
Okay.
That was the end.
Never mind the first date. Ang
Asian
gusto kong
mystique,
malaman yung second date when he tried to push his luck. So he invited you home to see his etchings. Wasn't that the
What do you mean by pushing his luck?
He invited
carried her.
Maybe it was
He carried her and was trying
it was
to
the
bring
most tired
bring her
line
to
in the world.
boudoir.
Sabi niya
And she refused, as a matter of fact.
Hindi.
Yeah.
Sabi niya kay Loida, would you like to see my etchings? Is that what he said?
He did say that.
Oh, and then ikaw
as
naman
naive
sumama ka.
As naive as I am, I went.
Pero attracted ka na rin.
Yes, well, definitely.
In
There
other
was
words,
chemistry there.
kutub na.
Okay, Loida, let's switch to that private life you had with Reginald Lewis. Your marriage and your role as a wife.
You mean
and
to
role
say
as
you
mother.
don't want to find out how she gave
No,
him sent him a letter
we'll get
to say I don't want to see you again?
We'll get to that later, no?
Ganun ba?
Now, what sort of man was your husband? What made you fall in love with him? Inversely, what was it in you that attracted him to you?
Well, I graduated from UP Law School. I was with the best and the brightest.
The best and the brightest.
And so,
Absolutely. I agree. Sige
and
na.
so, when I met Reginald Lewis,
Yeah.
he was very masterful
I see.
and very ambitious.
Uh-huh.
And therefore, there was, initially as you have read in the book,
Yes, yeah.
there was a tug of war within me because I was also ambitious. I was going back to the Philippines, for service, a
settled.
life of service and of public service. And he was a man who he didn't articulate it then, but I knew deep in his heart that he was going to
Places.
disprove a lie that people of color cannot go to the very top of economic power. Okay? So somehow that was his
Ando doon
hidden
na yan.
ambition, naroon na yon. So as I said, okay, I'll not meet a man like this again. So I went with it.
Loida, what was the secret of the amazing success of your 24-year-old marriage with Reginald Lewis? You bore 2 adorable daughters, Leslie and
How do you know
Christina.
they're adorable? Are they
In the
really
book,
adorable?
yeah. In the book, they were mentioned as adorable. And let me quote you again. No? Let me quote you what you said. No? Quote, "When your husband comes home, it should be an oasis where he can drink water and strengthen himself so that he can go out again and slay dragons. He doesn't want to come home where there is another dragon. He will die. That's my own theory of what a wife should be to her men." Tell me, Loida, is this a recipe that applies only to Reginald Lewis or to every other husband?
No, I think, it makes great sense. Okay,
I
if
see.
you decide that he is going to be the breadwinner, even if I was earning income, then you must be completely supportive of your man. Especially in the United States, when they go out, you do not know the slings and arrows that they have to confront. Exactly. Somehow I think as women, we have better shields or resources within ourselves, at least for myself. And therefore, when he comes home, he should have an oasis so that he could be refreshed and go out and fight again.
I see.
I think it's a winning recipe.
Absolutely.
Loida, Winnie, I thought I knew a lot about women already. I'm learning a lot more tonight.
Obviously not. Obviously not.
On that note, we will pause for another break in our adventure tonight, looking into this life of Loida Nicolas-Lewis and her late husband.
I want to ask about the leveraged buyout.
Loida, Miss Lewis, I suppose you are a Roman Catholic, of course, a Christian, and I would like to ask you, what is the role of prayer and religion in your life? And I ask this question because quite a number of people in the Philippines are beginning to forget God and the role of their Christianity. Do you believe that a divine hand guides human destiny?
Oh, of course. God is an integral part of my life. When we were growing up, my family has always been spiritual, my mother, my father. But then, especially when my father died, my mother took Christ in a personal way, or met him in a personal way, and brought all of us. My brother Francis now is a pastor. Especially when my husband died, and that was like the
1993.
In 1993, in January 93, I had gone through the crucible. It's sort of like going through fire. And I had to go within myself and catch that spark of divine fire for my strength. And from that time on, I know he took my husband, but God is going to be with me. So I hold on to his hand and walked.
Really, follow-up question, no? Is it because of your Christian devotion that you are colorblind, that as to whether people are black or white or yellow or brown, you make no difference whatsoever? Since you do not classify people by their race, how do you classify them?
Well, we were brought up in a family. My father was poor, and he was an orphan early.
I see.
Except for his mother, who was just a school teacher. And my mother also was the same. They don't classify people according to economic status or by the color of their skin, but the way heart is, by their integrity. And therefore, when I met him, it was just accidental that he was African-American. It was what he was. And I think that's the best way to deal with people. Treat them with respect.
How did your friends and other relations, how did they react to the fact that you were in fact dating a person of different color?
Well, some of my friends,
I can imagine.
Let's take it. Let's face it. Filipinos or the Philippines have been a colony of the United States, and therefore, a colony of Spain. So 300 years of colonialism, where being fair, being white is good, being dark, being not fair is bad. Therefore, many of my friends have the same discrimination or bigotry as Americans. But it didn't bother me because I know they can't help themselves. They're still my friends. It's just that I know what I am, and I know what he is. And therefore, what other people think of us is immaterial.
So when he I say, made his move on you that night, and you rebuffed him.
I like his move on.
Well, that's what the book says. He decided he was going to make his move, but that was his first.
I like your preposition on you.
Sinupalpal siya. I enjoyed that, and then
And then you rode down the taxi home in dead silence between the two of you, and then you wrote him this letter, but the letter was
I don't
rather
wanna see
funny.
you again.
He says, I never want to see you again, you know, I'm going to have intimate relations only with somebody who's going to be my husband. And then she ends it with saying, I will always have fond memories of you. I mean, that was mixed signals if I ever saw one. What was in your mind when you were
No,
writing?
it wasn't a mixed signal. It was goodbye. Fun memories because I did enjoy being with him. Except that, you know, he wanted something more.
So then he
just
grabbed it. He grabbed that fond memories and said,
No.
Something that
It's
you
not so
yourself were
much.
not willing to give, I suppose.
Baby, during our time, that was never done. I mean, heavens, excuse me.
That's right.
Go
That's
ahead.
right.
We are part of the old generation.
That is true. But my husband, as you would read from his book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun, has the tenacity of a pit bull. Okay, now he will not take no for an answer. So when he called me up again, I was intrigued. Didn't I tell this man I don't want to see him again? And so out of that, you know, curiosity, I said, okay, I'll go out with him again this last time.
And then you really fell in love with him.
Yes.
When did you fall in love with him? Exactly. First date, second date, third date.
That's what I want
Sandali
to
lang, importante ito eh.
No, I think-
Let's go back in time to that blind date you have, which was arranged by Mr. Glover, who was
Yes.
your boss at that particular
Yes.
time. And it was a foursome with your younger sister, Millie Nicolas. Something must have happened during that blind date, coup de foudre, as they say in French, and that the emotions it released must have been some kind of a tempest, because eventually you and he were caught up in the tempest and you decided to marry each other. So what happened?
No, the first meeting
Tinatanong
was
nga natin
very, the first meeting was very, very animated. It's
I see.
just that, you know, he was a lawyer, I was a lawyer, and you know, we just had so many things, interesting things to talk about. So, you know, you'd say
When
good food.
did you
right?
fall in love, Loida? When did you say, this man I'm going to marry?
I think it was like a rising tide that grows up slowly.
So it was not a tempest, it was more
a growing realization of what he
Okay,
is.
I mean, because you know, within 6 months you had decided to marry him. So when within that 6 months, I want to know when you decided.
Probably it was when we were after Christmas. We were at the Empire State Building.
Nuts.
There was in the riverboat with Count Basie playing music, and we were dancing. And I was saying, you know, I don't want this to continue because I know how it will end. I'm going back to the Philippines, and you know, rather than hurt each other, you know, let's not continue the relationship.
As you were dancing cheek to cheek.
So,
And he said, no, Loida, you don't know how it will end. And that sort of like opened my mind and said, maybe yes, maybe I don't know how it will end.
Pero
So,
umuwi ka pa rin.
well,
And then in San Francisco, tinawagan mo siya.
Okay, again, I you know, at the very end, when my Melly was going back home, so I again vacillated and said, I'm going to give up my family, my ambition, my country. So maybe I should go back. But on the way back, I was broken-hearted and completely crestfallen.
I see.
And as I was saying, I said it in the book because I was being interviewed, that, you know, you hear that song, Everything is Gray, and everything was gray. I mean, I couldn't see colors. And so I called him back and said, darling, I'm coming back.
Loida, you remind of a survey that was taken by McCann Erickson, one of the largest advertising public relations firm in the Philippines, and they took a survey on morals and values of the Filipino youth about 8 months ago. And that survey brought out a very astonishing fact that Filipino women value their virginity and did not want to surrender virginity before marriage. I suppose that kind of value was very much in you when you first met Sir Reginald Lewis.
Are you asking her whether she had marital sex?
What? She did not want to have sex with him. Precisely.
I suppose on the second date.
That's what determined him. Hey, this woman is different.
Okay. All right. I think love is very precious.
Yeah.
And when you fall in love with someone, a person, there must be that commitment to be with him
I see.
for long period of time. And so when that love materializes into a physical union, it's all part of one. Love is not what you see on television, where you are attracted to each other physically, and then you
go to bed.
You go to bed. So, you know,
I see.
Now, I wanted to ask, the thing that impressed me most, aside from the fact that he never took defeat, is it time for the break? I want to find out,
Yeah.
I want you to tell us in as short of a time as possible, how your husband was able to parlay, to be able to buy a $22 million company with no funds of his own.
Loida will answer that question in the next segment of Fine Line. Getting more and more interesting. Stay with us.
$22 million,
We'll pause
laway lang.
for a brief break.
Okay.
Anyway.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Loida, before the break, I was asking you to tell the viewing public how your husband was able to parlay and nothing, literally nothing, no money out on his part, into a $22 million acquisition. Of course, this was his fourth try, no? If at first you don't succeed, try again is Lewis's motto. So tell us how he did that.
Well, in 1984, he was a successful lawyer by that time. We had a comfortable living, so we had some money. But the deal is for 22 million with 1 million equity, meaning 1 million cash of his own. So although as a lawyer we were comfortable, you don't accumulate that kind of cash. So what he did was he borrowed 500 million from a MESBIC, 500,000 from a MESBIC organization, where they would probably have some equity if it is not paid. Preferred stocks, it called. They will pay the interest. The other 500,000 he borrowed from Morgan Bank. He banked with this Morgan from the time he started his law firm. And all through the years from 1972 to 1984, they saw how this lawyer was accumulating, making good, growing up his bank account. And he has seen to it that he talked to them and told them about his plans. So when he brought this plan about McCall, they listened to him and they said, "You have watched your growth. We know that you have integrity, and we know that what you said you will do, you will do it." So they lent him 500,000 on his signature, no collateral, because he said he will pay it in a month.
Local banks, please take note how a bank in the United States lent $500,000 to a man on the basis of his signature alone and on the basis of the future that
They
he
don't
had.
do that normally
Oh,
here.
good God, collateral like mad. Reg Lewis would never have been able to get anywhere here. Yes,
But
yes.
you must understand, my husband had a track record. Okay? So the bank is not just giving him somebody out in the street. They knew his track record. They knew of his
He
integrity.
didn't have any businesses of his own. He was just a professional lawyer earning income. He didn't have any, wala siyang collateral, kaya signature lang niya.
That is true.
Oh,
No collateral.
I mean, in
but
other
his
words,
collateral was his character. And
Ayun.
that's more than
a
enough.
character
Integrity.
loan.
Yes.
You know, it's very difficult.
It
It's
is a
very
character.
difficult to get
It
that
was
kind
a
of loan
character
here.
loan.
Yes,
Yes.
and I'm glad that bank.
And he paid it in 21 days.
Can you imagine?
Let me switch the interview, Ms. Lewis, to my understanding that you speak 4 languages: French.
If you're going to start talking French with
Italian.
Loida, I'm sure this is a
think-
start to it.
I
Sige nga
think-
mag-Frances
I
na
think
kayo.
our audience would certainly appreciate it. She could say a sentence or two in French, like a Christmas message, and I would try to be able to translate it in Tagalog or in English.
Kaya banga na naman ni Teddy Benigno ito.
Oui, je voudrais dire que
Oui.
la paix du Seigneur est avec vous, avec l'audience de cette chaîne.
Ah bon, d'accord.
Et aussi que toute la gentilité de l'enfant Jésus
Oui, oui.
est avec eux aussi.
Ah bon, d'accord. Miss
Itsura
Loida
lang.
Nicolas-Lewis said to say that she knew about the experience I went through, and she was convinced that the Lord God Jesus was with me toward that affair, and that she was the one, as a matter of fact, who was instrumental in keeping us alive, and that during this Christmas season, the message of the love of Jesus Christ would prevail over all of us in the Philippines. That's about it.
I am in the presence. I am in the presence of two Francophiles, and I'm totally left out because
It's all right. I translated.
I'm very uncomfortable when I am in France. Yeah, I'm so glad that both of you like France. That balances me out. Well, and soon after, after 4 failures over 9 years, then he got his success, and then immediately after that, another success. Yung parang success breeds success.
Yes.
You tell us about how he got TLC Beatrice. First, you have to tell. Is it time? It's time.
We need, before Loida
that's what
answers
I
your
thought it
question,
was.
we'll pause for another break. Anyway, the next segment starts with her reply to
Okay.
your very
Again.
crucial question. Okay, we'll pause for another break. Stay with
Sabihin mo
us.
naman kung ano yung TLC.
They normally come after that.
Loida, di naka 22 million, and his ambition went out again, and this time from 22 million to over $1 billion dollars. Tell me about that $1 billion TLC Beatrice.
Okay, after 3 years of working McCall pattern, he was able to make it profitable. The first time, the last 2 years,
Double
in
the income.
its history, double the income. McCall has been there for 115 years, and the last 2 years of Mr. Lewis administration produced the best income for McCall. So he turned around, sold it at great profit.
90 to 1.
Yes.
90 to 1 return on investment, Teddy.
90 to 1, huh?
Sure.
19 to 1.
God,
I see,
unbelievable.
okay.
And then right there, he was brought the deal of Beatrice International. The KKNR had acquired the Beatrice organization, and they wanted to pay down the debt. So they're selling the international aspect of Beatrice, which is 64 companies in 31 countries. And to get the best price, KKNR, this is the buyout firm of Kravis.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and so they set it out at auction. My husband was bidding against Citibank, against Obampoint, which is a food company in France, and against several financial buyouts in New York, like Westray, and he got the highest bid. So
And
they
he put in
awarded to
$15
him.
million of his own money.
Well,
so naka-15,
it's
75
no,
million na ang
actually,
nakuha niya.
well,
Di, talagang
that's-
multimillionaire na
Okay,
kayo nun.
I would like to make a correction. That was the book said from the interviews of, but actually the equity portion of Beatrice is only 10 million. 51% or 51 million from Mr. Lewis. No, wait. 10 million. 50% is Mr. Lewis, and the other 50% are the institutional investors.
So how much was his out
5 million.
to get control of an
To
almost
get
$2 billion
control of a $2 billion company.
Ayan ang tinatawag mong truly leveraged buyout. Now, a fast shift.
I don't know.
Okay,
Winnie, we don't have any time anymore. I would like to ask Loida to end this interview with her by reading her quotation on page 309 of the book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun?
How much money do you spend on clothes? Quick.
It is a statement on what love means. And Loida, could you kindly read this?
Okay.
How
I
much money?
spend sufficient
Yeah.
money, reasonable
Ikaw
money.
naman, tinatanong ng mga housewives yan eh.
I think it's a very poignant and very touching
Ayan,
message.
okay.
Just right for Christmas.
When Mr. Lewis died,
Yes.
I gave a speech, eulogy, and I answered the question, why was he successful in spite
Yes.
of racism in America? And this is what I said. The foundation on which Reginald F. Lewis grew up is a foundation based on love. Not the love that we see on television or the love in which you say I do, I love you, and then forget about it the next day. No. It is the love that St. Paul talks about in his letter to the Corinthians. Love that is patient, hopeful, expecting, not nagging. It is a love that is kind, not hurting with your tongue. It is a love that is not conceited, not self-centered, not ego-based, not saying I love you, in the phrase I love you, but saying I love you. The emphasis is on you. It's not selfish. It does not keep a record of wrongs. Don't say, aha, ginawa mo yan, one. Ginawa mo na naman, two. Throw away that record of wrongs. True love never gives up. Its faith, its hope, its patience endures. And so, my darling, you had it in your early life, and I tried to give it to you in our marriage. I have loved you without conditions, without reservations. My love for you will never end.
God, Winnie, it touches me here. And I don't like to show any emotion on firing line, but we would like to ask our guest, Loida Nicolas-Lewis, to say a 1-minute message to the audience of Firing Line for Christmas.
Yes. In the final analysis, all that matters is love. So, love one another as God has loved you. Thank you very much.
Beautiful, Loida.
Beautiful, very beautiful, very poignant, very touching. And so we bring again, you see, the curtains down on. This is almost a Christmas presentation of Firing Line.
Baby, love is eternal.
Love is eternal.
It's all year round.
And so we would like to bid goodbye and to thank, you see, our very extraordinary guest, Ms. Lewis. Exactly.
Thank you very much
Thank you
for
very
having
much
me,
for
Teddy.
having appeared on Fire
Winnie.
Line. And Winnie has been a great help when I was absent. And so this is Teddy Benigno. Keep firing and keep fighting.
And this is Winnie Monsod of the University of the Philippines. Remember, in Firing Line, you can call a spade a spade. Thanks, Loida.
Thank you.
Thank you.